to Stephanie Rodriguez and Manuel Aguilera. Now, I saw on social media some comments about the lawyers that are involved here. One recurring comment was, he gets paid either way. I want to make sure we're clear on something. We don't get paid either way. We're doing this for reasons more than money. This family lost their daughter the day after Thanksgiving, mere weeks before Christmas. Brianna was a girl who had the world at her feet. Her whole life was in front of her. She was a girl with big plans and big dreams. She was an honor student, a former cheerleader, a proud sophomore at my alma mater, Texas A&M. She was a political science major and wanted to be a future lawyer. I just found out from her mother that the last time I spoke to the Pre-Law Society at Texas A&M, Brianna was in the audience. We refuse to believe that this young woman committed suicide. Why? Because she was not suicidal. Contrary to what has been sloppily reported, in many cases by a lot of the people here, she did not engage in self-harm. She had never tried to hurt herself before. So why are these groups of lawyers engaged in this? Because this family wants the truth. They're entitled to the truth. We were asked by these parents who love their daughter to find the truth of what happened to her. They didn't feel like they were getting thorough information from the Austin Police Department. And despite what the detective said yesterday, or maybe implied yesterday, it's kind of hard to figure out what he was saying, this is very much an ongoing investigation. I've been around a long time. Good investigations lead to conclusions. Bad investigations start with a conclusion, and then they try to support the conclusion through the investigation. It's clear to me, based on what this detective and the things that he said to Stephanie, it's clear to me that he had made a decision immediately about what his conclusion was and then went about trying to support it. The Austin Police Department formed a conclusion within hours of this tragedy that this was a suicide without any investigation. This family had a horrible tragedy, and the communication from the Austin Police Department was so bad that the family became concerned enough to engage me and my colleagues at Gamez Law. And they also asked the public for help. With proper communication, this matter would be treated like most investigations, where no information is shared until actually after the investigation is complete. But what did we see yesterday? What we saw yesterday was a hurried, rushed press conference. And I think we all can agree the reason they had a press conference yesterday is because they knew that we were going to have this conference today. They gave the family no notice of the press conference. They sent 2 emails, and then the detective went on camera in front of millions of people and told everybody that this young lady committed suicide. Ironically, the same thing he told Stephanie, the mother, within a few minutes of talking to her, without any investigation. That's not the way it's supposed to be done. The family had dared to ask questions about what was going on and what had been learned by the investigation, was then punished with leaks to millions of people from the Austin Police Department, to the detriment of their daughter and to their daughter's memory. So we were hired to assist this family in finding the truth, and we've been doing that. But everyone knows that investigations are supposed to remain confidential until the investigation is complete. And why is that? That's because you don't want to tamper with potential witnesses or scare off witnesses or create a false narrative or color witnesses' interpretation of the facts. Everything that detective did yesterday, that's exactly what he did. Do you realize that the autopsy has not been completed? Now, I want you to let that soak in for a minute. The autopsy has not been completed. The medical examiner's office told us that it will not be completed for 60 to 90 days, yet you had the so-called lead detective in front of millions of people saying that he had concluded that this was a suicide. Now, how unprofessional is that? The police department asked the medical examiner to do a toxicology report. We don't have the results of that toxicology report, yet this investigator stood in front of all of you and said that he had concluded this was a suicide, even though by law he doesn't have the authority to make that conclusion. Only the medical examiner has that authority. The police department also asked for a rape kit to be done. They admitted to us yesterday in a Zoom call that, well, if they do the rape kit, we don't even know where they're going to send it to. This is what we're dealing with, and that's the reason we're involved. It's like the Keystone Cops over there in Austin. And it's incredibly frustrating to this family. Why would the Austin Police Department hurriedly perform or set up a press conference and leak details of the investigation and suggest to you that there was a suicide note without the medical examiner ever even performing their job? Why would they do that? Now, what he told us, I'll tell you what the investigator told us. He said, oh my goodness gracious, the witnesses are getting death threats. I said, from whom? Why? No answer, because it's foolishness, absolute foolishness. And it's that kind of conduct that caused the family to try to find somebody separate from the Austin Police Department to investigate this. We don't have a toxicology report, we don't have a rape report, we don't have a cause of death, and none of those things, don't put that on top of that, none of those are conclusions that a police detective, a corporal, can make. He doesn't have the statutory authority to determine the cause of death. And I'm surprised that none of you even asked that question. He gave you an opportunity to ask questions. Not one of you said, hey, wait a minute, detective. When did the state of Texas give you the legislative authority to determine cause of death? I thought only either a JP, if there's no medical examiner, or a medical examiner could do that. Is that what the medical examiner has done? He would have said to you, no, actually, the medical examiner hasn't even completed his autopsy. But none of you asked that question. You just bought everything that he said, hook, line, and sinker. And then you published most of the things that I saw on Instagram and the newspaper were cause of death determined. Young lady committed suicide. That's irresponsible. That's irresponsible. You should not do that. You should say, wait a minute, detective. How many times have you been written up and reprimanded? Detective. Wait a minute, when did you have the statutory authority, detective, to determine cause of death? Detective. That's your job. Now it's my job. The public dissemination of information by the Austin Police Department during an investigation, the way it was done yesterday, is unethical, unprofessional, and incredibly damaging to an objective, unbiased investigation. And it's also damaging to the memory of this child. All this family is asking for is a thorough, complete, unbiased, open-minded investigation. That's all they're asking for. That's what any parent would ask for whose child went to college, went to a game, lost her for several hours, and then found out hours and hours later that she supposedly jumped off a balcony. And with just a few questions, a few pointed questions, quickly figure out that these investigators, this so-called investigator, did not know what he was talking about. We're going to get into that. You can't close a case before you even have the cause of death from the medical examiner. Period, full stop. You don't have that right, you don't have that authority. We have to get this right. This is not just for this family. This is for any family. You have to get this right. You can't close a book in the middle of reading a chapter and say that that's closed and it's over. That's not how it works. You can't misclassify a death like this. When you misclassify a death, you're planting a lie in the soil where truth should grow. And as I said, to her credit, Stephanie Rodriguez was very close to her daughter, very close. Talked to her daily. knew everything that she was up to, everything that she was doing. The very first interaction she had with the detective from the Austin Police Department, he told her, your daughter committed suicide. The very first reaction, the very first interaction. At that point, he hadn't talked to one witness, he hadn't seen her phone, he hadn't done anything. That's sloppy and irresponsible. He claims she made suicidal comments. He told us in the Zoom call, she made suicidal comments. You know what he was talking about? The other day, when I was talking to a friend the other day, I said, man, you're going to make me jump off a bridge. That's what he's talking about. Silliness like that. He later claimed she was making those kinds of statements on the day or the night that she died. If that's the case, why did their friends leave her out on the balcony by herself? If that's true, because it's not true. None of the things that we've been told by the Austin Police Department are consistent with the actual facts that we've learned. The detective was talking about suicide before he was ever given her phone. Then he gets into her phone and he sees an essay that she wrote and he calls it a suicide note. She took creative writing the semester before. Now, I don't know what the purpose of that. We'll never know what the purpose of what she wrote and deleted. But the suggestion was that she left a, quote, suicide note. Total malarkey. Total malarkey. There's something she wrote on the 25th. She talked to her mother on the 25th. She was with her boyfriend on the night of the 25th. She was talking to her mother every single day after that. We see pictures of her smiling. We see pictures of her having fun. We see pictures of her partying. Total baloney, what they're trying to sell to you. And why? Am I suggesting that there's some kind of conspiracy? No, I'm suggesting they're lazy and they're incompetent. Just so I'm clear. I'm not suggesting any sort of conspiracy that there's some kind of somebody in power that wants this to go. No, I'm not suggesting that. I'm suggesting that there's incompetence and laziness on the part of the detective. That's what I'm suggesting. The suggestion they've made is she wrote an essay, because it's not a note. She wrote an essay on the 25th that she deleted. And then she goes and kills herself 4 days later. This is their logic. It's really ridiculous. So, a few things they didn't bother to even explain. I don't even know what they did, honestly. I know what we've done. We sent someone to the apartment. We had someone take the dimensions of the apartment. We had somebody measure the railing and the height of the railing. We know how tall Brianna was. She was 5'2". The railing's 44 inches. You don't fall over it. There's no furniture out in the balcony. There's nothing to climb up on, to jump off. Anyone that's on that little balcony, it's literally as big as this. It's a little bitty old balcony. And there's a window just like that you can see onto the balcony. The apartment is like a dorm. It's very small. There's no way you can be in that apartment and hide. If you're in the apartment, people know you're in the apartment. It's a little small apartment. No offense to the apartment complex, but that's what it is. It's like a little double-room dorm with a small balcony with no furniture. These are easy things to find out. Things that you would say, wait a minute, you're saying that this young lady was out on the balcony and she was 5'2", she had to somehow climb over the railing to try to kill herself? Then certainly you guys could see that. Certainly you knew that was happening. How could that possibly be? It doesn't make any sense because it didn't happen that way. She was 100 pounds, 5'2". There's no way she could fall over that railing accidentally. There's no way to be on the balcony and you be inside and not know somebody's on the balcony. It's not possible. It's almost impossible to be inside the apartment and not know somebody's in the apartment with you, even though there's 2 little bedrooms. This is called common sense. I tell you what's most concerning. They didn't explore the fight that Brianna apparently had with somebody at the tailgate at the Austin Rugby Club. I think she went to, what was the name of the tailgate that they had there? Some student organization.
Latin Economic Business Development.
Latin Economic Business Development tailgate at the Austin Rugby Club. There was an altercation between her and another female. No investigation of that. Turns out that other female was in the apartment with her that night. There was a witness between 12:30 and 1 a.m. who posted on TikTok. Many of you have seen it. Young man posted on TikTok that he could hear up above at around the 17th floor in that general area fighting, screaming. Somebody saying, "Get off of me!" And then a muffled sound. He posted it, got many, many views. You can get on TikTok and look at it now. We talked to him this morning. You guess what? Here's the irony, or maybe here's the tragedy. The police didn't bother to talk to him. Now, why wouldn't they talk to him? He had incredibly specific information about what he heard. He could hear it loud enough, he could hear the words that were spoken. "Get off of me," and screaming, and then a muffled cry between 12:30 and 1 p.m. right next to the apartment. We had an expert say, wait a minute, could he hear that? We had to engage an expert to say, is it possible that he could actually hear that? The expert said, absolutely. Absolutely could hear that. It makes a lot of sense. Never talked to by the police. We have a witness who was in the apartment across from the apartment where this apparently occurred, who could hear running back and forth and screaming. And then she said, I could tell something bad had happened. Did y'all know this? Ridiculous. Her entire family was in the apartment. The police could have talked to her and several other people. They failed to look into the anonymous message that was sent. There was an anonymous message that was posted that said, hey, I have specific information that this young lady was locked out on the balcony. Did you know that? It's not part of the investigation. Why is it not part of the investigation? Because they made their decision literally within minutes. Within minutes. Now here's where it gets a little dicey, and here's where I'm having it, and I want to be very careful because I don't want to be accusing anybody, because I'm not accusing anybody other than the APD, the Austin Police Department, not doing its job. At first we were told that she jumped from the balcony and the three ladies, the three young women that were in the apartment, and we're talking about, as I said, a tiny little apartment, were asleep and didn't know where she was. That's what we were told first. That they were asleep, they didn't even know she was on the balcony, they didn't know where she was, and that's the reason why they didn't call the police until 12:15 the next day. That's what we were told. That's part of the cops' timeline. Okay? Put up the timeline, Ryan. They said, according to the plot, we haven't talked to them. These are these anonymous women who were in the apartment, three of them, one of which was the lessor or the lessee of the apartment, who vacated the apartment the very next day and never went back. Did you know that? This is the timeline that the police gave us yesterday. This is the timeline. And if you can't look at that timeline and 1 second point out the problem of that timeline, then you're not doing your job. We'll get to it. So at first we're told that the three women didn't know where she was and they were asleep. That's what we were told. And that they didn't know where she was and they were looking for her and they were texting her mom and it wasn't, and they decided about 12:14 the next day, 6 hours later almost, that they decided at that point they couldn't find her, so they were going to call the police. This is what we were told by the Austin Police Department. Lay aside what was heard happening at about 12:30 to 1 o'clock that night. Lay aside what the witness across the hall said. Lay aside what the man down on the street said. Just disregard all that. This is what the police say. It must be right, according to them. because they did such a thorough investigation. This is what they gave us. Not one of you have asked a question about it. Not one of you. But this is what they said. Her friends called the police at 12:14 the next day because they didn't know where she was. They hadn't seen her. They thought maybe she had went out. That's what they said. Keep that in your mind. When I asked the police that, like, wait a minute, how is that possible? How is that possible? A whole group of 14 or so people came into the apartment that night after they had been out partying. They got there about 11 or so. Everybody left, right? That's what they say. And it left just 4 girls there, 4 young women, right? And the 4 young women, 3 of them didn't call the police till 12 o'clock the next day because they didn't know where she was. That's what the police say. Lay aside what the witnesses have said about that and lay aside the fact that that's a really small apartment. It's hard to get lost in that little small apartment. I want you to look very carefully. The first entry on the timeline. According to the police, let me walk over there. Excuse me. Brianna did not have her phone. She didn't have her phone, so she had to call. To make a call, according to the police, she borrowed her friend's phone, meaning one of the 3 women that was in the apartment. Now look at this very carefully. According to the police, she borrowed her friend's phone and made a call from 12:43, and it lasted 1 minute. At 12:46, 2 minutes later, the police were responding to a 911 call because she was outside on the ground. Now do the math. So you're probably thinking, well, she must have, she hung up her friend's phone and she just jumped. She hung up the phone and she dropped it on the balcony and she jumped. First question you should have is, where's the phone? What did she do with the phone? I asked the police that 3 different times. 3 times. They sidestepped me every time until this morning. They sidestepped me because they hadn't thought about it, because they rushed to judgment. They finally answered the question this morning. And you know what they said to me this morning? And they said it, and they didn't even realize what they were telling me because they're so sloppy. I made them put it in writing. I have it here. I'll read it to you. Austin Police Department did not find the phone on Miss Aguilera. Miss Aguilera returned the phone to its owner before she was seen going onto the balcony. Now, how is that possible? That is 180 degrees different than what you told us previous. That is absolutely contrary to what you told us previous. Previous, you said the 3 women were asleep. You said they didn't know where she went. But then when I asked the one question over and over, and you had to answer it, then all of a sudden we realized, if she did in fact use her friend's phone, like they claim, if she did in fact use it for 1 minute and was found already 2 minutes later by a passerby and the police were already responding to a 911 call, think about that, what the ramifications of that are. That whoever phone she was using was standing right next to her as she went over the balcony, if she went over the balcony. Now you're saying to yourselves, well, shoot, there's got to be a reasonable explanation. We should talk to the witnesses. We should investigate. We should figure this out. That's what we're saying. Now you're getting it. You sat there, and with all due respect, you all, I watched it, you all sat there, and you had this corporal, or whatever he is, lead detective, and Mrs. Rodriguez will tell you how he is and her interactions with him in just one moment. But you let him stand at a podium just like this and feed you total baloney. And all you had to do is say, wait a minute, Detective, wait a minute. She borrowed somebody's phone. Where is that phone? Maybe she must have went over the railing with it. She had to give somebody. No, according to him, she returned it to its owner before she was seen walking back out to the balcony. Absolutely impossible. Very suspicious. We have a problem. And I shouldn't have to ask the detective 3 times the same question, should I? I shouldn't have to do that. But I did it, and I'm going to keep doing it. And another thing, why would you tell these kids, the boyfriend who Stephanie knows, who's been over to her house, who her daughter has been dating, they're in love, why would you, detective, tell him not to speak to Stephanie Rodriguez? Don't talk to her. What kind of foolishness is that? Just absolute insensitive and inhumane in my view. Before I go any further, I'm getting a little incensed here. Let me introduce to you Stephanie Rodriguez. She wants to read to you a statement, and I hope you'll give her your full attention.
Hello, my name is Stephanie Rodriguez, and I'm the mother of Brianna Aguilera. Brianna was a driven, disciplined, and caring person. She was beautiful. She was a loving daughter, a protective big sister, and a caring granddaughter. A second mom to her 2 younger brothers. Her baby was her little Yorkie, Ava. All of us were her best friend. She made everyone around her feel loved and supported. I considered her my best friend, not just a mother-daughter relationship. We talked every day, and she would tell me everything. I miss her so much. Her brothers miss her too. Her father and grandmother miss her so much, and so do all her friends. Brianna grew up as an all-star cheerleader, an incredible athlete. She was an honor student and a member of the National Honor Society all throughout school. Christmas was her favorite time of year. She loved decorating, baking, and hiding the elf on the shelf for her little brother. Her brothers already miss her so much. Brianna graduated magna cum laude from high school. She was accepted to many colleges, but chose Texas A&M. She was studying political science and criminal justice. She was not like most young girls. She loved writing more than watching TV. Her favorite class at A&M were her creative writing classes. She dreamed of attending law school in New York and wanted to become a criminal defense lawyer. She was so smart and had such a bright future. She dreamt of a life of where she could make a difference. My daughter was not suicidal. I know my daughter better than anyone. We spoke every day. I spoke to her on the 25th, the 26th, and the 27th. Even the morning of the 28th, she was not suicidal. To the Austin police, I can deal with you being annoyed each time I called or tried to talk to you. I can deal with how arrogantly you talked down to us each time we talked. I can deal with you telling my daughter's friends not to talk to me like I am some sort of criminal. But I cannot deal with you doing a news conference and saying false things about my child without a thorough investigation. I cannot deal with you jumping to conclusions and not performing an actual investigation. I cannot deal with your failure to do your job. Do your job.
The police, as much as I've always been a supporter of the police, with all due respect to them, do not determine cause of death. That's not their job. Their job, that job, is specifically reserved for the medical examiner's office. There is no medical examiner in the county, then it's the JP in the county. In Austin, it's the job of the medical examiner to determine cause of death, not Detective Robert Marshall. The medical examiner told us that a rape kit was done and the autopsy will be performed. It'll take us 60 to 90 days. So that begs the question, why did Detective Robert Marshall tell us that they had reached their conclusion and that the investigation was complete? Doesn't work that way. How is it that Robert Marshall has determined the cause of this young woman's death? He doesn't have that authority. His job is to question all the witnesses. We've already offered up several. We'll offer up several more for him to do his job. Hopefully a different investigator will be involved. There are many questions about what was done here, about what happened on that night. And it's already going to be incredibly difficult for the Austin Police Department to conduct an objective investigation at this point. And that's because the way that the Austin Police Department has handled this and jumped to conclusions within hours of this tragedy disqualifies the Austin Police Department from further investigation of this matter. So, I'm doing this today. I'm calling on the Austin Police Department to reopen the investigation with a different investigator, to reassign Robert Marshall and put this in the hands of a different investigator. Failing that, I will be calling on the governor to engage the Texas Rangers. We will submit a formal packet to them with all the evidence we have gathered so far, and we will gather. We intend to present 30 to 40 pages of information, statements, and other factual data that they need to do a proper investigation. And here are the questions I hope are answered. Austin Police Department, why would you close your investigation without having all the facts? Why not wait for the autopsy results? Why not wait for the rape kit result? And who would you send it to if you've already made up your mind? Why not question all the witnesses, the ones that we've questioned? The young man who was down on the ground, who heard somebody say, "Get off of me," or the young lady and her family across the hall who heard running, screaming, and, quote, something bad had happened. Why not question them? Why not examine all the phones of the friend group? We asked that question in the Zoom call. You know what we were told? We don't have the power to look at their phones. Hogwash. Hogwash. You have that power, and you need to do it. Why hold a hasty press conference to announce that this young lady had killed herself without even talking to her mother to see what her affect was leading up to the 28th? You heard what she said. She knows her daughter. She knows her daughter more than anyone. Why not talk to the friends immediately? Why wait? Why wait to talk to her friend group? Why not talk to them immediately? Why did you let the owner of the apartment, that is the young woman who was leasing the apartment, vacate the apartment? Literally vacate the apartment and leave town. Why won't the boyfriend talk to us? The boyfriend that was a longtime boyfriend of this young lady and was very friendly with her mother. Why can't we see the texts? Why can't we see the phones? Where is her wallet? Where is Brianna's wallet? It's missing. They didn't tell you that, did they? I see you writing. They didn't tell you that, did you? If you had asked the question, they would have told you that. They told you what they wanted you to hear. They didn't tell you the complete facts. Her wallet is missing. Why did her friends wait until 12:14 the next day to report her missing? If she had barred the phone and returned it the night of, 2 minutes before she jumped her death. Why didn't they examine the balcony? Why didn't they examine the railing? Why didn't they see if there was some sort of table there, a chair there that somebody who's 5'2" would have to step on to get over the railing? Why didn't they look for scuff marks? Why didn't they do anything? They didn't even bother to look to whether if somebody did in fact jump off the balcony, whether they would end up in the tree that's 30 some odd foot forward of the apartment. Y'all didn't ask that question either. The laws of physics aren't different in the city of Austin, you realize. The same laws of physics as exist here in Houston. If, when the phone call came in at 12:46 and the officers responded to the 911 call, if it was so obvious that this young woman had fallen to her death, why was it till 6 o'clock, 5 hours later, that they ever went into the apartment complex? If it was so obvious that that's how she had died. These are the questions you should be asking. At the press conference, you didn't ask any questions. You didn't ask any questions. You just lapped it up like it was cool water and you were very thirsty. Very disappointing to me. So, we have given you a lot of information. We're going to submit a packet. I'm going to call on the governor to... I don't expect, based on the conduct I saw from the police chief of Austin, her defensive manner that she approached the podium yesterday, I don't expect any relief from her. I don't expect she's going to say, King's X, oh, you're right, this was sloppy, it was not thorough, it was kind of embarrassing, we're going to get a different detective to start over. I don't expect that to happen. I expect what's going to happen is I'm going to send a formal letter to the governor asking for the Texas Rangers to be engaged. And I'm going to submit a detailed packet to the governor's office and ultimately to the Texas Rangers to actually do an investigation to figure out what actually happened, because we still don't know. Notice I haven't suggested to you what happened, because I don't know. I'm starting to get a sneaking suspicion. So I've given you a lot of information. So what is your headline? Your headline is this: there are serious and disturbing questions raised with regard to the Austin Police Department's handling of the investigation surrounding the death of Brianna Aguilera. The Texas Rangers have now been called to intervene. Thank you very much. Let's go.
How long are you willing to give APD to reassign an investigator?
That takes 2 minutes. That's what I expect. Let's go. Y'all move your camera, please. Thank you all.